So I am really excited to be filming this video today. I talked about this in my last video. I had to take a little break from filming videos, which I was pretty bummed about, but I just couldn't film because I was traveling for a conference and then my mom was visiting. But I wanted to thank those who left really nice comments on that video saying to enjoy my trip and that they would be there when I got back. That was really sweet. It wasn't that long of a break really, but it still bummed me out, and I would rather be filming videos more frequently. So I was bummed that I couldn't film for over a week. So I'm very excited to be back, and I'm really excited about today's video. I am going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of May. I love watching these videos. I don't know why exactly, but I really like them. The monthly wrap-up videos. It's just interesting, I guess, to see what people read, like what they've read most recently. So, I read 8 books in May, and I am really excited about that. My goal was to read 5 books, so I'm pretty happy that I read 8. I want to be careful not to make reading so much, I don't want to make it too achievement-based, achievement-oriented. I don't love making, or I never did like making reading goals, but I think it'll be fun actually. I just want to be careful not to overdo it or to get upset if I don't reach a goal. Like, it's just fun. It's just supposed to be fun. And I don't want to feel like I failed if I don't reach a goal or something. But, yeah, I read 8 books. And actually, I don't think there's one book that I read this month that I disliked. So it was a good reading month. So I will talk a bit about each of the books that I read. I'll give a little description of what they're about if you don't know already. And I'll tell you what I thought about them and if I'd recommend, and what I rate them out of 5. I think that I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I read them. Now, also, some of these books I have already talked about in other videos, so I'm sorry if you watch those videos and this is repetitive sometimes. So, the first book that I read, I have already talked about a couple of times, and that was Billy Summers by Stephen King. So, of course, Stephen King is known for his horror stories. But this is not horror, this is a thriller crime book. And it is about a character named Billy Summers, who is a hitman. But he only kills people if he thinks that they are truly bad people. If they've done something that he considers really morally wrong. Otherwise, he won't do the job. So that in itself is interesting. But the book follows this one job that he is hired to do that is going to pay him a lot of money. So we follow this job that he has, and so it's kind of suspenseful in the fact that you're not sure if the job is going to end well or not. And that's what I thought the whole book was. However, that's only about half of it. The other half has other twists and turns. And there's actually a romance subplot in here. And one of the reasons I love this book, so I loved this book, I made a whole video on this book reviewing it. So you can watch that if you want, if you're interested. But it's a spoiler review. But one of the reasons I love this book is the romance in here, because it was really believable and interesting and sweet. And I really love the ending of this book. Sometimes people say that Stephen King doesn't write good endings. This is the first and only Stephen King book I've read, but I plan to read more. However, I loved this ending, actually. That's what stuck out most to me, is I liked the ending. And endings are pretty important to me. I want to feel satisfied at the end. So the writing, as expected, is amazing in this book. It is exciting, especially in the second half. It is a longer book, I think 400 and some pages, but I read it fast. I think I read it in 3 days. And I think I rated this book 4 stars. However, I could probably give it 4.5. The reason I wouldn't give it 5 stars is I did find it hard to get into in the beginning. Well, not that hard, but just a little bit hard. But I was able to stick with it because the writing is really good. It just was a little slow in the beginning, I thought. But I still think about this book. I still think about certain parts in it and certain elements of the romance. So I really, really recommend this book, and I loved it. I also think it's a good book to start off with, potentially, of Stephen King. I'm saying that as someone who has only read that book, but I think it succeeded in getting me to want to read more of his books, so maybe it's a good one to start with, especially if you're not wanting to jump right into one of the horror books that Stephen King has. That was the case with me. Okay, the next book I read was, can't remember if this was the order or not, but I read a nice short thriller, and that was The Good Lie by A.R. Tor. I don't know if I'm pronouncing Tor right, or if it's Tori. I think it's Tor. But I have talked about this one too before, but just briefly. This book is about a This book was just mid-tier for me. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, I think. It kind of disappointed me because it was a book that someone on Book Talk was really hyping up. So I expected good things, but it was just pretty forgettable. And it was a little too weird for me, if I'm remembering correctly. I also don't even really remember the story, so that's a sign to me that it wasn't very good. But I remember not wanting to put it down when I was reading it, and I think I read it in only a day. So I do think it's one of those good thrillers. I always find thrillers good for reading slumps, and if I'm wanting to just get one book out of the way, maybe I just finished a longer book, then I might pick up something like this. But I'm going to read the back of this book because I'm actually forgetting the story. So it says, psychiatrist Dr. Gwen Moore is an expert on killers. She spent a decade treating California's most depraved predators and unlocking their motives. Predators much like the notorious Bloody Heart serial killer, whose latest teenage victim escaped and then identified local high school teacher Randall Thompson as his captor. The case against Thompson as the Bloody Heart killer is damning and closed as far as Gwen and the media are concerned, if not for one new development. Defense attorney Robert Gavin is a still traumatized father whose own son fell prey to the BH killer. Convinced of Thompson's innocence, he steps in to represent him. Now Robert wants Gwen to interview the accused, create a psych profile of the killer and his victims, and help clear his client's name. As Gwen and Robert grow closer and she dives deeper into the investigation, grave questions arise. So does Gwen's suspicion that Robert is hiding something and that he might not be the only one with a secret. So that synopsis kind of makes you think of one particular way that the story might go, which I don't love. But I will say that this book wasn't predictable, which is good for a thriller. And I liked that. I liked the writing. I don't think it was amazing, but it was good. I just found the story forgettable. And for that reason, it's just like a mid-tier book. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you just want to, like I said before, read a really quick thriller. But even then, I feel like there are so many better ones. So, that's The Good Lie. I will say that there are interesting things in here to do with morals and conflict of interest and psychology. So if you're interested in stories that touch on those things, maybe you will like it. Yeah, but also check trigger warnings for that book. Next, let's talk about one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and I've made a whole video on this one as well. That is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I think I've convinced a few people to read this on YouTube and also outside of YouTube. I'm hoping that other people like it as well. It follows the story of a young woman who falls in love with an older man, and then her life changes drastically, and she climbs the social ladder and is now living in a really rich mansion, but she is somewhat haunted by Rebecca, who is the late wife of the man that she fell in love with. And there's a twist in here that I really enjoyed and I did not see coming. And I love the writing in Rebecca. It is very lyrical. It is very immersive. It is very immersive, and I love that. I really love the writing. And I really just love this story. I find it so good. It's really good storytelling, I think. And I've talked about this, but I really love the romance in the book. I really bought into the romance, even though some people who've read this book say that the romance is problematic in here. I actually really liked it, and I'd say if you're a little bit averse to age gaps, you might not like it. It might sort of turn you off a bit from this book, but if not, I think I would recommend it to pretty much anyone. I love this book so much. I watched the classic movie based on this book, and I love that too. And it's just so good. I want to talk about it with people and do like a deep analysis of it sometime. So that's Rebecca. I gave Rebecca 5 stars. Next, I read I'm not sure about the order actually, but I read Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This is a story about This is a book about a young girl who is a witch. So she has magic powers, as do her 2 sisters. And they have an abusive father, an abusive wizard father, who takes advantage of them. Now, this book has major trigger warnings, I would say. There are lots of things in here that you might want to There are various things in this book that might be distressing for people. But I really enjoyed this book. It was really well written, I thought. So I really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was really fun. There are a lot of dark elements to it, but I found the story to be fun and exciting. And although it's about witches, it didn't feel like stereotypical. And I think that this book will really make you feel something. So that's all I'll say on that. I think I gave it 4 stars. Definitely recommend to people who like fantasy books and who enjoy sort of coming of age stories. And there's romance in here that I really enjoyed. Okay, but definitely check trigger warnings on that book. Let's talk about the books that I lent to my mom. So I read Happy Place by Emily Henry, and oh my goodness, I loved that book. I loved Happy Place so much. It was my first Emily Henry book, and of course she's really hyped as a romance author, and I want to read more of her books for sure. Although I have heard that Happy Place is her best book from some people, so maybe I'll be a bit disappointed by other ones, but I definitely want to read some. I definitely want to read Book Lovers. I just think that one in particular I would like. But Happy Place is about a girl who has this friend group, and they're really close. Or they used to be really close, and now they're older, and they, I I think they're in their late 20s, maybe even early 30s. And they get together sometimes at one of their friends' cottages in Maine. And the setting is really nice. It's on the water. It's in the summer. It's a really good summer book, I think. And it's really good vibes. Really cute, cheerful, and basically what happens is they go to the cottage for a little vacation with the friend group, but the girl, she used to date one of the guys in the friend group, but they broke up, but they didn't tell the rest of the friend group yet. And she shows up at this cottage and something happens and it creates tension, and there are some other things, some other secrets amongst the friend group that cause some tension and some things that people are sort of repressing and not talking about, and lots of things going on within the friend group. And oh my gosh, I love this book so much because you really buy into every single one of the relationships involved in the story, and the romance is amazing. The guy that she's in love with is just like one of those characters. It's like perfect. Just seems like the perfect guy, and it's just so fun to read. It's so just makes you feel good, even though there's a lot of tension and conflict that goes on. It's handled in a way that makes you feel like you still feel happy. So as you can see, I'm smiling a lot. And yeah, this book just made me so happy. The ending was great too. And I definitely recommend, if you enjoy romance books at all, even just a little bit, I would suggest reading it. And it would be a really good book to read soon, like in the summertime. Yeah, so I gave Happy Place 5 stars. I loved it so much. I don't even have anything bad to say about it. Maybe one thing that I did think of actually is there's a lot of humor in the book. Sort of banter, not just between the main girl and the main guy, but the friends too. A lot of sarcasm, and I found it funny sometimes, but sometimes it just could be my sense of humor, but I didn't find it funny. But then it's like I can get past that a lot of the time, but this time I felt like it was a little bit overdone, like there was too much humor of it. So that's my one critique of it, but yeah, that's it. I loved it. The other book I read that I lent to my mom was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who I still consider my favorite author so far. I still enjoyed the first book that I read of hers more, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I did also really like Daisy Jones and the Six. I just found it a little bit predictable. Like, I feel like we've seen that kind of story. We've seen that kind of story quite a few times, especially in movies and biopics. So that's my critique of it, but I really loved some of the characters so much that I'd say that, on top of her just excellent writing, made me love the book still. I think I gave it 4 stars. But if you don't know, Daisy Jones and the Six is about a fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and how that band developed, how they came together, and the dynamics among the band members, and the struggles that the different band members are going through. And it's all told in the form of an interview. So it's as if everyone in the band is sitting down and being interviewed by an unknown narrator until the end, and you find out who the narrator is. Which is fun. But it's a unique book in the way that it's written. And I really liked it that way. I liked the way it was written. But I really loved one character in particular, and that was the lead singer's girlfriend, who is not a member of the band. But she says so many interesting things that really make you think about what it means to trust someone, and what love really can mean to somebody. And that's really what made the book for me. Just that one character, and the way that she thought. But definitely recommend Daisy Jones and the Six. It's super popular for a good reason, I think. But I also think that it's not my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book yet, and there could be other ones that I haven't read yet of hers that are even better. But definitely recommend that book. And honestly, I might reread that book just for, like I said, that one character. But I also tried watching the TV show. There's a TV show made based on the book. It's, I believe, an HBO show. Could be wrong. No, I think it's Amazon Prime. But I couldn't get into the show. I think it's because it's not R-rated. I feel like that story needs to be R-rated in order to be really interesting, like the book is. But I think a lot of people like the show too. Next, let's talk about a really short and sweet book, and that is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. there's a quote on the back that says, "An exhilaratingly weird and funny Japanese novel about a long-term convenience store employee. Unsettling and totally unpredictable. My copy is now heavily underlined. Sally Rooney, Guardian." I agree with that quote, a lot of it. I didn't mark up the book, but I would say this book is exhilaratingly weird. I didn't love this book as much as I thought, honestly, that I would. I heard really good things about it, and I thought I would really enjoy it, and I did, but it wasn't like 5 stars or anything. I think I gave it 4 or 3. I think 3. And that is because I found it really repetitive, even though it's short. But I read it in like 3 or 4 hours. It was super quick and easy to read, and I really loved that experience. But also the ending in particular was really weird. But I do think that, or not the ending, sorry, there's a little essay at the end, so you don't even, it's not really part of the story necessarily, but it was very weird. And I did read it, and I was a little like, that's really weird, but I like weird things. I just found it repetitive and a little bit predictable, like very obvious in what it's trying to say, which I don't really love. Like, I'd rather it be a bit more subtle. But what this book is trying to say, I think, is really important and really interesting. So this book is about a young woman who gets a job at a convenience store part-time while she's in school. But then she just makes it her whole life. Her whole career and her whole life. And this book, I think, in my opinion, is really a anti-capitalist book. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I think you'd like it. And it's funny. And it also is saying important things about mental health, sexuality, and just society in general and expectations. It's also kind of existential in a way. So I did really like this book, and I would recommend it. It's a really fun, quick read. It is less than 200 pages. And if you can deal with a little bit of weirdness, I think you'll really like it. Alright. Then I believe my last book is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. So this book is about a PhD student in mathematics, theoretical mathematics, who is kind of a genius, at least with math, who meets a girl who is an artist. Who works in a museum, and they meet. There's kind of a spark there, and they agree to have 6 conversations with each other. I believe it was 6, it might have been 5, but so they do that. But then a whole bunch of other stuff happens after that with them. And I don't totally know how I feel about this book yet. I think I really liked it, but it's a very different book from the ones that I've typically read. In the way that it's written sometimes. Sometimes it feels like it's in first person, but then in other parts it feels like it's in third person. And it's a little bit hard to follow sometimes, but not too hard. Just sort of takes a little bit of extra effort. And I think that the romance is really interesting in this book. And it says a lot about mental health. Specifically certain disorders, personality disorders. And there were a lot of things in here that I really enjoyed. But I was expecting something different. I thought that it was going to be more about time travel. Let's read the synopsis, and maybe that explains why I thought that. 2 people meet in the Art Institute by chance. Prior to their encounter, he is a doctoral student who manages his destructive thoughts with compulsive calculations about time travel. She is a bipolar counterfeit artist undergoing court-ordered psychotherapy. By the end of the story, these things will still be true, but this is not a story about endings. For Regan, people are predictable and tedious, including and perhaps especially herself. She copes with the dreariness of existence by living impulsively, imagining a new alternative timeline being created in the wake of every rash decision. To Aldo, the world feels disturbingly chaotic. He gets through his days by erecting a wall of routine, a backbeat of rules and formulas that keep him going. Without them, the entire framework of his existence would collapse. For Regan and Aldo, life has become a matter of resigning themselves to the blueprints of inevitability until the 2 meet. Could 6 conversations with a stranger be the variable that shakes up the entire simulation? So this book deals a lot with time and the nature of it, but there's not really much time travel involved unless I'm misunderstanding, which is possible. But I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about this, to be honest. I liked it, and I think I'd give it 4 stars, and I think that's what I did give it. But I don't know. It didn't really go very many places, if that makes sense. But I did like Olivia Blake's writing. I found it really easy to read. So I'm going to read The Atlas 6 next, which is a popular book by her as well, which I believe is a fantasy book. This is mainly a romance, I would say. It does say a love story. It's a little bit difficult to like the characters, or at least one of them, but that could just be me. And I don't think you have to like every character to like a book. So I think that's the case here for me anyway. I think I would recommend this if you want to think a bit about time and what time means, what it is. It's a little bit philosophical, but also if you resonate at all or want to read about personality disorders and how those sort of manifest in relationships. So that is Alone with You in the Ether. I really like the title. So that is all of the books that I read in May. Overall, I didn't dislike any of the books that I read, which is awesome. And I think it shows that I'm doing good research ahead of time. Watching YouTube, obviously. I watch so much YouTube while I'm working, when I'm not working, and when I'm laying in bed about to sleep. And a lot of it is booktubers and ASMR artists. So I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Please comment down below the books that you read in May, or recently if you didn't read any in May, and maybe some that you think I might like or that you would recommend to anyone. I would love to hear about it. So I think the next video I'll make is my June TBR. The books that I want to read in June. And there are some that I'm really excited about. However, it could very well change because the books that I set out to read in May were not the ones that I ended up reading for the most part. But I think that happens a lot to people, so I won't be too hard on myself. So I hope to see you soon, and until